Hey, there are times when we think that it's just an average day and there's nothing really special that happened on that day. And the Lord sometimes will guide me to do things on a certain day and will really impress my heart to accomplish it for that particular day. And then I'll go find on the Hebrew calendar what the day meant in the Jewish history, the biblical history of the Lord, and I will be so surprised and shocked at the timing of what God worked out. Today, the Lord was having me send something through the mail that was extremely important about Jesus' testimony. And I'm not going to go into detail about what it was, but I was sending out basically the testimony of Jesus, and it was going out today, Tuesday, June 28th, 2022, and I just wanted to have a record by making this video of what I discovered that this day actually meant in biblical history, because it's very significant that this testimony went out to somebody specific, and I just want to kind of keep it private, but know that there was something really significant about today. When I looked up, after I got it mailed and I accomplished what I was doing for the Lord, then I went to the Hebrew calendar to see if it was any kind of special day on the calendar. And I was really kind of stunned that this happened today on Tuesday, June 28th, 2022. If you look up on the Hebrew calendar, Tuesday, June 28th, 2022, and this testimony was sent somewhere specific on about between 3:50 and 4 p.m. So right around there. And I looked this up, and it turns out today is Sivan 29, and it's the year 5782. But something significant happened in biblical history on this very day in 1312 BCE, which was that Moses dispatched 12 spies to tour the Holy Land in preparation for its conquest by the people of Israel. And part of my message had to do with filming in Jerusalem, in Israel, and going there. When I discovered that Moses sent out the 12 spies to go into the promised land after having been in the wilderness for so long, and this thing could be very significant in my own future, God willing, and be praying for that God would open all the right hearts, all the right doors, and touch people that receive it and let it heal them and bring joy to many people. So let's just talk about what exactly happened on this exact day in that year, 1312 BCE. The 12 spies, Meraglim, in the Bible, Numbers 13 through 14. The episode of the Meraglim, Hebrew for spies, is found in the Torah portion of Shelach, Numbers 13 through 14. It tells of 10 spies who brought back frightening reports about the promised land. Cries of despair rang out from the camp. If only we had died in the land of Egypt, or if only we had died in this desert, wailed the panic-stricken people. Why does the Lord bring us to this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and children will be as spoils. Is it not better for us to return to Egypt? The people even suggested appointing a new leader, one who would take them back to the familiarity of Egyptian bondage. The response: Moses and Aaron fell flat on their faces And Joshua and Caleb tore their clothing in mourning, but they did not remain silent. The land we passed through to scout is an exceedingly good land. If the Lord desires us, he will bring us to this land and give it to us, said the two brave scouts with confidence. But don't rebel against the Lord, and you will not fear the people of that land, for we will win them as easily as one can eat bread. Their protection is gone, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear them. The people were not convinced and went so far as to threaten to stone Caleb and Joshua. Just then, God's presence appeared in the tabernacle. God expressed his exasperation with the nation and his intention to annihilate them. This was not the first time this had happened. It was a year ago that God had wished to destroy the people following the sin of the golden calf. At that time, God taught Moses the 13 attributes of mercy, the formula through which divine forgiveness could be obtained. Now again, Moses begged for mercy, pointing out that if God were to destroy the people right there, the nations would mistakenly think that he did not have the power to bring them into the promised land. After Moses invoked the 13 attributes, God agreed to spare the children of Israel. However, they were not yet ready to enter the land. Rather, they would wander the desert for 40 years, 1 year for every day of the spies' disastrous expedition. Caleb and Joshua would be among the few to enter the promised land from the existing adult male population, leading the very children whose parents were afraid that they would be killed by the land's inhabitants. The 10 scouts who had slandered the Holy Land died in a plague that began in their tongues, appropriate for people whose sin began with speaking negatively about the Holy Land. You know, that's really something because, you know, it talks about how the people that come against Jerusalem in the last days, that their tongue will dissolve in their mouth, and their eyes and their sockets. Interesting that the tongue was where they died in this plague because of the people's sin began with speaking negatively about the Holy Land. And this is very incredible because what I'm trying to do is promote Jerusalem and the biblical narrative, the story, the history of Yeshua. And this was sent out today, on the day Moses sent out the 12 spies. And I think that's incredible. So now there was a failed second attempt. Distressed that they were destined to wander the desert, there were some people who tried to reverse their punishment and attempted to enter the land without God's permission. But that wasn't the right thing to do either. Why do you transgress the word of the Lord? Moses pleaded. It will not succeed. Do not go up, for the Lord is not among you to protect you. However, they defiantly ascended a mountain, leaving Moses and the Ark of the Covenant behind. The Amalekites and the Canaanites who lived on the mountain came down to meet them and trounced them soundly. What the spies did wrong. The spies were tasked with going to the promised land and bringing back fruit and a report, which they did. Weren't they just being honest, sharing their findings in good faith? The key to understanding this story is that Moses did not tell them to provide an assessment as to whether or not the people would be able to enter the land. If God willed it, surely there would be a way. He asked them only to report the facts, leaving the interpretation open. Now, the Jewish story of their masters tell us that we are like spies in our own lives. When we encounter challenges and difficulties, we need to hold back from becoming prophets of doom and gloom. We have God on our side, and we can surely succeed, which is incredible because what I sent out today, I'm praying that it will succeed, and I prayed that as I mailed it off hoping that it would succeed. And here's this message that came later. And then it says, read more, belief in yourself, which I will read to you next. But let me finish this part about the spies and what they did right. The Torah describes the spies as men of distinction, leaders of the children of Israel. How could they have failed so badly? Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Laidi explains that they had the loftiest of intentions. In the desert, the people lived an idyllic life of spiritual bliss. Life revolved around the tabernacle, and their major pursuit was to understand God and His Torah. And I sent out the living Torah today. The spies feared that setting the land, plowing, sowing, and reaping, they would fall from their high spiritual peak. The giant fruit of the land and the promises of material wealth that they portended frightened them, and they shared their fears with the people. Ultimately, they were wrong, because the purpose of creation is not for us to escape reality, but for us to embrace it and make it into a dwelling place for God. And that can happen only when we engage with the world. The night of crying. The people cried that night. What night was it? It was the night of the 9th of Av, the day when the holy temples in Jerusalem would be destroyed, and a day the Jewish people would mourn every year. You cried for naught, said God. By your lives I will make this a night of crying for generations to come. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. Back in the desert, every year on the 9th of Av, the people would dig graves and go to sleep in them, understanding that those of them who had reached the age of 60 would not rise in the morning. On the 40th year of their desert wandering, they dug graves as usual, but no one died. Fearing that they had miscalculated the day, they tried again the next night, and the next night, and this continued until the 15th of Av, when the full moon indicated that the decree of death had been lifted, and they celebrated. That day was established as a holiday so happy that it is rivaled only by Yom Kippur. Read more about the 9th of Av and the 15th of Av. We already know what happened on the 9th of Av. Now, this was a punishment because the spies brought back a bad report, and then the holy temples, the first temple of Solomon was destroyed on the 9th of Av. Herod's temple was destroyed on the 9th of Av. The German Kristallnacht, where they destroyed the shop windows, broken glass, on the 9th of Av, happened in World War II. And it was just like doom and gloom on the 9th of Av. But something happened on the 15th of Av. The dancing maidens of Jerusalem. Said Rabbi Shimon ben Gamaliel, there were no greater festivals for Israel than the 15th of Av and Yom Kippur. On these days, the daughters of Jerusalem would go out and dance in the vineyards. And what would they say? Young man, raise your eyes and see which you select for yourself. It's very interesting to note on the 15th of Av that the dying of the generation of the Exodus ceased. Several months after the people of Israel were freed from Egyptian slavery, the incident of the spies demonstrated their unpreparedness for the task of conquering the land of Canaan and developing it as the Holy Land. God decreed that entire generation would die out in the desert, and that their children would enter the land in their stead, as recounted in Numbers 13 and 14. After 40 years of wandering through the wilderness, the dying finally ended, and a new generation of Jews stood ready to enter the Holy Land. It was the 15th of Av, the year 2487 from creation, the year 1274 BCE. As long as members of this doomed generation were still alive, God didn't communicate with Moses in an affectionate manner. As soon as the last of these men died, once again God lovingly communicated with Moses. It's just a quick momentary thought reading this, that the bridegroom of Israel would be maybe preparing to take his bride into the eternal promised land. this is a potential thought of a possible time of rapture, perhaps. I've always believed it to be at the last trump during Rosh Hashanah, the Feast of Trumpets. Every single one of the feast days of the Lord, the holy convocations and times appointed by God, everything he accomplished from creation to the crucifixion to the resurrection, they all happened on specific moed, the appointed holy days of God. And this is what God told the Jews to observe, these specific days. So these are the days of the Lord on his holy calendar, and he accomplishes everything on those days. Isn't it interesting that the death stopped on this particular day of the 15th of Av? Would this possibly be the time when the dead in Christ would possibly rise from their graves and go meet the bridegroom? It's a thought. This is just something I'm thinking as I'm reading this, and this is from a Jewish source that I'm reading this account of the 12 spies, so we can get it from the Jewish perspective. So what else happened? The tribes of Israel were permitted to intermarry in order to ensure the orderly division of the Holy Land between the 12 tribes of Israel. Restrictions had been placed on marriages between members of two different tribes. A woman who had inherited tribal lands from her father was forbidden to marry out of her tribe, lest her children, members of their father's tribe, cause the transfer of land from one tribe to another by inheriting her estate, as recounted in Numbers 36. This ordinance was binding on the generation that conquered and settled the Holy Land. When the restriction was lifted on the 15th of Av, the event was considered a cause for celebration and festivity. Now, could that have something to do with the meaning of, as it was in the days of Noah, it will be, like they will be marrying and giving in marriage, and this will be happening at that time because the restriction is lifted as we are entering the Holy Land in the eternal promised land is what I mean. I hope that makes a little bit of sense. What else happened? The tribe of Benjamin was permitted to re-enter the community. On this date, the tribe of Benjamin, which had been excommunicated for its behavior in the incident of the concubine at Gibeah, was readmitted into the community of Israel as related in Judges 19 through 21. This occurred during the judgeship of Othniel ben Kenaz, who led the people of Israel in the years 2533 to 2573 from creation, which is 1228 to 1188 BCE. Also on this date, Hoshea ben Elah opened the roads to Jerusalem. Upon the division of the Holy Land into two kingdoms, following the death of King Solomon in the year 2964 from creation, or 797 BCE, Jeroboam ben Nebat, ruler of the breakaway northern kingdom of Israel, set up roadblocks to prevent his citizens from making the thrice yearly pilgrimage to the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, capital of the southern kingdom of Judah. These were finally removed more than 200 years later by Hoshea ben Elah, the last king of the northern kingdom, on the 15th of Av in the year 574 BCE. The dead of Betar were allowed to be buried. The fortress of Betar was the last holdout of the Bar Kokhba rebellion. When Betar fell on the 9th of Av in 133 CE, Bar Kokhba and many thousands of Jews were killed. The Romans massacred the survivors of the battle with great cruelty and would not even allow the Jews to bury their dead. When the dead of Betar were finally brought to burial on the 15th of Av in 148 CE, an additional blessing, Hatov Vehametiv, was added to the grace after meals in commemoration. the day of breaking the axe. When the Holy Temple stood in Jerusalem, the annual cutting of firewood for the altar was concluded on the 15th of Av. The event was celebrated with feasting and rejoicing, as in the custom upon the conclusion of a holy endeavor, and included a ceremonial breaking of the axes, which gave the day its name. Now, isn't that interesting? God gave me that almond tree firewood several months back, which represented, as Penny Caldwell said, the holy almond tree menorah. And interesting, this is part of the message that I sent out on this day, the day Moses sent out the 12 spies. Now, as the Lord was impressing my heart to put this package together and ship it out today and send it out there of the testimony of Yeshua, I sometimes think, is today the day I should send it? Should I do something different? Should I go to my storage unit and try to find such and such and put it in there? Should I just forget about it and do it? Well, I forgot about it and did it today, and it turns out to be this special day, Sivan 29. So it's talking here, it has a link to believe in yourself. It says, and this is written by Mendel Kalmanson from Chabad.org. And it states this: I have a problem, the man blurted out. The Rebbe tilted his head slightly. I've started to become more Torah observant, but I have a girlfriend who isn't Jewish and I plan to marry her. The man fell silent. What else could he say? He braced himself for a rebuke, expecting to be told how grave a transgression it was to intermarry. The Rebbe was silent for a while. I envy you, the Rebbe finally said. The young man did not quite grasp the meaning. The Rebbe, he thought, who is on the highest of spiritual planes, is envious of me, the guy who just told him of his intention to marry a non-Jew. The Rebbe continued, there are many ladders in life. Each person is given his or her own. The ladders present themselves as life's challenges and difficult choices. The tests you face are the ladders that elevate you to great heights. The greater the challenge, the higher the ladder. Many of you know the challenges I've faced since my mother passed away, January 27th of 2018, and then later on in 2020 losing our home. And these have been the worst tests of my life after writing an incredible testimony of Jesus that I sent out today. God has given you this difficult test because He believes you can overcome it and has endowed you with the ability to do so. Few are presented a ladder as challenging as yours. Don't you see then why I envy you? The story goes. It was like stepping into a different world. From people to produce everything in the land of Canaan was gargantuan. It took 8 of them just to carry a cluster of grapes. Seriously, moreover, wherever they walked, people were burying their dead. They'd stumbled into a surreal and morbid nightmare, it seemed. My family members have died, and it's been very surreal. And it's been a nightmare. Oh, and security was skin tight. Amalek, the Jews' sworn enemy, dwells in the land of the south. The Hittite, the Jebusite, and Amorite dwell on the mountain, and the Canaanite dwells by the sea and next to the Jordan. A successful offensive, whether by land or sea, seemed fantastical to everyone in the reconnaissance unit, that is, but Caleb and Joshua. And remember the story where this angel came down from heaven and had 1 foot on the land and 1 foot on the sea? That reminds me of that. We shall surely ascend and conquer it. We can surely do it, Caleb excitedly rallied. The other 10 spies soberly countered. We cannot go against that nation, for it is stronger than us. Sometimes you don't think you can do things that are huge, that are risks that you're taking, and you feel like, weak compared to the power that these other people have that you're trying to share with, and you feel that they're stronger than you, and you can't possibly reach them. But after the spies described in detail their horrific experience and presented a sampling of mammoth fruit as proof of the land's bizarreness, the public agreed with the realists. Most peculiar about the story are the conflicting reports. Their stories could not be more divergent. The land that we passed through is very, very good, Caleb. The land through which we passed is a land that devours its inhabitants, the others. Which leaves us wondering, did they tour the same land of giants and grasshoppers? A deep psychological and theological truth accounts for the contrasting coverage. The more sober of the reports concluded, there we saw Nephilim, giants, and we were like grasshoppers in our own eyes. They simply didn't believe in themselves and their mission. God was having me fulfill my mission today, which I think is amazing. And even though I pondered it, should I do it or not? When it says they simply did not believe in themselves, I had to believe in myself and what God was telling me to accomplish this mission today. Is it a wonder then that they pronounced, "We cannot go against that nation, for it's stronger than us"? As one psychological adage declares, whether you think you can or that you cannot, you are right. 10 of the spies thought that they could not, and sadly they were right. Caleb and Joshua, however, believed that they could. We can surely do it. And today I surely did it. I sent out the testimony of Yeshua, which is why eventually they did. Choice equals power. Caleb and Joshua had also seen the monstrous inhabitants of Canaan and their formidable fortifications. They had also seen the endless funeral processions. The difference in reports was not a matter of facts, but philosophy. Caleb and Joshua internalized the belief that God doesn't ask of us more than what lies in our power to do. So I did what I could today. Even though I didn't have everything, I thought, God will open the door for something later if that's his intention. Thus Caleb declared, "We can surely go up, even to heaven, if Moses tells us. Make ladders and go up there. We will succeed in whatever he says." So they're talking about ascending into heaven. Is that pretty cool? It's very interesting thinking about going up in the glory cloud in the rapture. To Caleb, faith in God and in oneself go hand in hand. He created us and he created the world, and we can be trusted with bringing the two together. What's in it for me? We were born to navigate this rocky land called life. There are giants to vanquish, walls to climb, and odds to overcome. Do we think that we are capable of succeeding at this monumental task? And today I did. Because I can tell you, when that package is supposed to arrive, it's going to be July 5th by chance. And this is when people are speculating that could be truly the real Shavuot. And I won't get into all the details of what people are saying, but people are going by different calendars. And I know that we think that Shavuot has already passed and the 50 days counting the Omer and all of that, but it has to do with the harvest. So, do we think we are capable of succeeding at this monumental task? In the tradition of the spies, many unfortunately see life as a land that devours its inhabitants, instead of the land flowing with milk and honey that it is. Something has to change. Not the way we view the world, but the way we view ourselves. Are we capable of taking a risk? Are we capable of going forward as God, through the Holy Spirit, speaks to your heart, and you go ahead and do the mission, even if everything is not totally perfect to a T, even if you're missing something that you thought should perhaps have been in there, but you can't get to it right now, but God is allowing you to have this day to accomplish this mission, and today I succeeded, I took a risk, and I'll see what happens in the near future with this happening on the 29th of Sivan, and sending out this testimony of Jesus, Yeshua HaMashiach of Nazareth, the Messiah, and having this testimony go forth to bless many people who are struggling and suffering right now. And it's just one little package that God has had me send out today. And I just think I was just thrilled that this day actually happened to be just a random day in my thinking. But after I sent it out, I decided to look up the Hebrew meaning of today, June 28th, 2022, which wound up being the day that Moses sent out the 12 spies to go in to the promised land, the Holy Land. And we are waiting for Yeshua to take us into the eternal promised land, to go into the glory cloud and to meet him in the air, and the resurrection of the dead will happen. Now, let me just share this. According to some of the Jewish teachings, they feared not just physical danger, but a spiritual threat as well. Until that point, they had lived a spiritual life with nary a material concern. Food fell from heaven, the clouds protected them from the elements and enemies, etc. That's what's going to happen in the rapture when the Lord takes his bride. And ironically, the 15th of Av is the day that the men are looking at the women in the fields dancing around in Jerusalem that are looking for a husband. Okay, so upon entering the land, that would all change. So they had been in the protection of the cloud of the Lord, like we will be. And it says that as soon as they entered the promised land, everything changed. Their existence would become grounded in material involvement. Thus, they feared that exposure to other cultures and preoccupation with the mundane would weaken their spiritual focus. This explains their reference to the Benai Hanaphalim, angels who fell from heaven and failed in their attempt to transform the world. If even they failed, claimed the spies, how can we succeed? And the answer is, God is with us. God is with us to accomplish his mission, to put forth his testimony, to bring many people to be healed when they're in pain and agony from this world and death, and to be restored, and to have the resurrection of the dead happen so that we're reunited with our loved ones who've passed away. And this brings great comfort, and this is such a significant thing that has happened today on this particular day, and I am making a video because I want to remember this day and what I did on this day, so that if something in the future happens because of it, God has had me keep a record of this particular day of the 12 spies being sent out by Moses to enter the promised land. Joshua and Caleb had this other report, Numbers 14, verse 8. If the Lord delights in us, he will bring us into this land, a land flowing with milk and honey, and he will give it to us. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not be afraid of the people of the land, for they will be like bread for us. Their protection has been removed, and the Lord is with us. Do not be afraid of them." But the whole congregation threatened to stone Joshua and Caleb. So sometimes when you're doing the will of God, you can have these enemies that are trying to stone you, so to speak. They're trying to thwart your plans and hinder you. But God is with me as he was with them. Then the glory of the Lord appeared to all the Israelites at the tent of meeting, and the Lord said to Moses, "How long will this people treat me with contempt? How long will they refuse to believe in me, despite all the signs I have performed among them? I will strike them with a plague and destroy them, and I will make you into a nation greater and mightier than they are." But Moses said to the Lord, "The Egyptians will hear of it, for by your strength you brought this people from among them, and they will tell it to the inhabitants of this land. They have already heard that you, O Lord, are in the midst of this people, that you, O Lord, have been seen face to face, that your cloud stands over them, and that you go before them in a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. If you kill this people as one man, the nations who have heard of your fame will say, 'Because the Lord was unable to bring this people into the land he swore to give them, he has slaughtered them in the wilderness.' So now I pray, may the power of my Lord be magnified just as you have declared. The Lord is slow to anger and abounding in loving devotion, forgiving iniquity and transgression. Yet he will by no means leave the guilty unpunished. He will visit the iniquity of the fathers upon their children to the third and fourth generation. Pardon, I pray, the iniquity of this people in keeping with the greatness of your loving devotion, just as you have forgiven them ever since they left Egypt." "I have pardoned them as you requested," the Lord replied. "Yet as surely as I live, and as surely as the whole earth is filled with the glory of the Lord, not one of the men who have seen my glory and the signs that I performed in Egypt and in the wilderness, yet have tested me and disobeyed me these 10 times, not one will ever see the land that I swore to give their fathers. None of those who have treated me with contempt will see it. But because my servant Caleb has a different spirit and has followed me wholeheartedly, I will bring him into the land he has entered, and his descendants will inherit it." So isn't that a magnificent scripture right there, where it says that these people that God already had a story being told about his greatness, and these people had already heard it? And that you, O Lord, are in the midst of this people, that you, O Lord, have been seen face to face. And you, O Lord, have been seen face to face, that your cloud stands over them, and that you go before them in that pillar of cloud that has the fire in it, the fire of the Holy Spirit. And this is exactly what will happen in the resurrection of the dead and the rapture of believers. We will go and be in the cloud, and we will be transformed into a glorified state, as well as the dead who are raised first, and they enter the cloud, and we will see the Lord face to face in all his glory, because the glory cloud is what keeps people from dying when seeing his glory, because it's so powerful. Now, because people were not wholeheartedly believing that God was doing all these signs and wonders before their eyes, because they had seen all of this, God gave them signs. God gave them all kinds of warnings. And, they transgressed the commandment of the Lord. And Moses said, "This will not succeed. Do not go up, lest be struck down by your enemies, because the Lord is not among you." And they had indeed sinned, they said, "But we will go to the place the Lord has promised." And Moses is telling them, "Do not go up. You'll be struck down by your enemies, because the Lord's not among you." For there the Amalekites, Canaanites will face you, and you will fall by the sword, because you have turned away from the Lord. He will not be with you. But they dared to go up to the ridge of the hill country, though neither Moses nor the ark of the covenant of the Lord moved from the camp. Then the Amalekites and Canaanites who lived in that part of the hill country came down, attacked them, and routed them all the way to Hormah. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites and tell them, after you enter the land that I'm giving you as a home, and you present an offering made by fire to the Lord from the herd or flock to produce a pleasing aroma to the Lord, either a burnt offering or sacrifice for a special vow or freewill offering or appointed feast, then the one presenting his offering to the Lord shall also present a grain offering of 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with 1/4 hin of olive oil, and with burnt offering or sacrifice of each lamb, you are to prepare 1/4 of hin of wine as a drink offering. With a ram you are to prepare a grain offering of 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with 1/3 of a hin of olive oil and 1/3 of a hin of wine as a drink offering, a pleasing aroma to the Lord." And then it goes on talking about to prepare a young bull as a burnt offering and a sacrifice or as a peace offering to the Lord. Now this is interesting. It says in verse 14, "And for the generations to come, if a foreigner residing with you or someone else among you wants to prepare an offering made by fire as a pleasing aroma to the Lord, he is to do exactly as you do. The assembly is to have the same statute both for you and for the foreign resident. It is a permanent statute both for you and for the foreign resident. It is a permanent statute for the generations to come. You and the foreigner shall be the same before the Lord." Did you hear that? You and the foreigner shall be the same before the Lord. The same law and the same ordinance will apply to both of you and to the foreigner residing with you. And what does it tell us in Galatians 3:28? "There is neither Jew nor Greek. There is neither bond nor free. There is neither male nor female, for ye are all one in the Messiah, Jesus." We are one in the Messiah. We are the same to God. We are not different. They are not elevated higher. We are the same as the Hebrew children. That this message was given to Moses, and now Moses sent out the 12 spies, and look at what happened, and look at what has come forth from this disobeying God. All of these bad things happened, and now God is at some point going to restore things to the Jewish people on the 9th of Av, and the 15th of Av is this time of joy and rejoicing. And it's the time when death stopped in the camp, and there was no more death of the children who came up out of Egypt. Now we're going to come up out of Egypt, representative of the world and the nations, and we're going to go in the glory cloud. The dead are going to be resurrected, and the bridegroom is going to be looking for his bride in the field, and all of these things come together and are so fantastic. And so I wanted to tell this story on the very day that Moses sent out the 12 spies to check out the promised land, someplace that we are going very soon. And isn't it exciting that I achieved a mission for the Lord today, only to have it arriving July 5th, which some people are saying that they think that that's the real date of Shavuot, or they think that the rapture might happen on that day for whatever reason. Or people are speculating that that could possibly be the day when the Lord comes for us. Personally, I don't really think that it is, but I just think it's kind of interesting that this mission will be accomplished on that very day, just by chance. I did not try to make this happen. So We're to have faith in ourselves. We're to go forward when the Lord tells us to do something, and we're to accomplish the mission that He gives us. And so it's been accomplished today, and I hope and pray that blessing will come from this and this testimony of the Messiah. And interesting that my almond tree is about bearing fruit. So we'll see what happens, and I'm just documenting this for a reason, and I will maybe talk about it another time when and if something comes of it. So with all of that said, I think I just wanted to tell this story about today, Tuesday, June 28th, 2022, Sivan 29. And such an incredible event in the eyes of the Lord to send them into the promised land after having been in the wilderness and been protected by God all of that time. And now a change was coming, and the Lord was going to take them in, and everything was going to change. So the Lord is coming. We're going to go into the cloud, and everything will change in the twinkling of an eye at the last trump. And we will see the Lord face to face, just like they did in the wilderness, in the cloud of God. God went before them and protected them. And God is saying, believe Him, trust in Him. Don't back down. Don't turn away. Don't stop believing that this rapture event is coming for those who are faithful and true and believe. And they will enter the eternal promised land just like He promised. The day is soon coming. So I'm documenting all this. I think it's awesome. And I hope you'll subscribe to this channel. Give me a thumbs up. Help the algorithms. And also, if you want to support me, I really could use some support right now. It's been a long road, but I've been trying to stay faithful to the Lord all this time and follow the leading of the Holy Spirit, even in times of this test and deep struggle. And this is what they did. This is what they did back then. I'm talking about Joahua and Caleb. Stay strong in the Lord. Keep the faith. And you know, it really helped me to say those words, eyes on Jesus, that Tyler's always saying on Generation 2434. The other day I really needed something, and this picture of Jesus at the Last Supper, it's actually a statue, it popped up as the picture on my phone that day. And all I could think about was eyes on Jesus. So that really helped me get through that day. God's going to help us. And He's going to help us get through each day, as hard as it is, as tough as it is, as financially trying as it is. And He's going to be there with us because God is with us. Shalom for now. Have a good evening. And I'll talk to you soon.